what I want to do right now is briefly give you an overview on MLA citations. This will especially be helpful with your annotated bibliography. And by this point, you should have a decent amount of experience with citing in MLA format. The main reason that you do this is because in the work that you do in this course and in other courses, anytime you do writing where you're using outside sources, you'll need to give credit to those sources. And that's what MLA formatting is for. It's a specific standardized way of listing out the information that you used. And for assignments like the annotated bibliography in English 111, you'll remember you're required to have a few things. You have to have at least 5 sources. And you have to have at least 2 of those sources be scholarly sources from academic journals, essentially. And also remember that for each source that you have in your annotated bibliography, you have to have a brief paragraph where you summarize the content of that source and also where you talk about how you might use it to defend your thesis statement, ultimately when it comes time to write the essay. But as far as MLA citations themselves go, that really depends on what the source is. So if you got your information from one of the college's databases, then that's fairly straightforward. A lot of the time you can pull a MLA citation from the college database itself and just pull that over and drop it directly into your works cited page, your annotated bibliography, wherever you need to use it. You still need to check those. It's important to make sure that they're done correctly. But that way you don't have to go through all the work of building a citation yourself. But chances are you won't exclusively use the college's library for your research. You may go outside of it, and that's fine if you do that. But if you do, then you'll need to, a lot of the time, build your own citations. So let's say that you got information from just a website on the internet. And to make it easy, let's say that you got it from ESPN.com. And it was just an article on ESPN.com. For a website, usually there are going to be consistent things that you need to have for that citation. So you'll need to have the author's last name and first name. So last, comma, first, period. Then you'll need to have the title of the page itself. And that's usually just going to be the title of the article, whatever the article was called. And I'll give you a more specific example in just a second. Then after that, you'll have the website. So remember, there's website and then there's web page. If you think of it like a book, a website is a book and then it has a lot of different web pages within it. So website is usually the owner of the content that's on the web page. So you'll have the website, then you'll have the date of publication. The general way to do that is just have the date, then the month. Usually the month will just be 3 letters, period, and then the year. So let's say February would be Feb, with a period, and then the year, 2020. And then you'll have the hyperlink. So http://www.whatever it is, .com. The website will be in italics, just to keep things complicated. Generally, though, that's the way you will do a citation for a website or for a web page. If there's no author's name listed, then you just don't list one. And when you go to alphabetize this, you'll just alphabetize it by the title of the page instead. And when you have in-text citations based on this, you will use at least part of the title of the page in parentheses in the piece that you write. So, I mean, if this were, something from a website, I'll just use myself as an example. It would be James, Joshua, again, whatever the title of it is. If let's say that it did come from ESPN, then you would simply have that there. I wouldn't put like ESPN.com. You can do the hyperlink here. We would put in an actual date, so there's 0 February. So it's 20th February, why not? And then again, we have a hyperlink. And always, when you put a hyperlink in, most of the time it's going to try to make it an active clickable hyperlink. If you right-click on that, you can go down to remove hyperlink, and that'll get rid of that. And I would recommend doing that. It just makes it look neater. But again, this is if you go outside of the library's database. If you're in the library's database, you can pull the citation ready-made most of the time. Now, granted, websites aren't that difficult, but there are myriad other types of sources you can cite. You can cite tweets, you can cite digital files, MP3s, albums, personal interviews, obviously you can do, which is one of the easiest citations to do. It's just important to have all of these things correct so that you don't lose points on something really small and trivial. But you also need to make sure to check on the citations that you pull from the library's database, because they may not always be accurate. Usually they're fine, but not always. So I hope that that's helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, see me. I'm always available, as you know. But the second part of this video will be more about using the library databases themselves and how you build either a works cited page or an annotated bibliography for those purposes. Okay. This is part 2 of the video on MLA citation, formatting, that sort of thing. Now I'm in my office because I have to record the screen. So I am going to use NC Live here just because it's really difficult to get to the library's databases when you're off campus. NC Live is easier. Currently, and this is as of March of 2020, the password for NC Live is BATSBLUE, BATSBLUE. I don't know why. That's just what it is. But once you're logged in to NC Live, you should see it say up here at the top, Fayetteville Technical Community College, logged in. So, let's just do some really basic searching here. I want to just give you an idea of how these things are done. So let's think of some specific topics. Oh, look at who it is. It's Yorick. He lives in my office. So, just so you know, if you ever come to my office and you sit in the visitor's chair, this is who is staring at you the whole time with his googly eyes. Okay, anyway. So back to what we were doing. Let's look up... I don't know if I want to do COVID-19 coronavirus because there probably won't be anything new enough. But let's go with Let's go with influenza vaccine. We'll just see what happens. Oh boy, that is some heavy science right here. Let's see. Okay, this looks good. So let's say that we want to write that your topic is what's now being called vaccine hesitancy. A lot of people call this basically just anti-vaccination, or call people who are like this anti-vaxxers. But vaccine hesitancy means people who are less likely to get vaccines because they're not sure, for whatever reason, about vaccines. So this is a scientific article. Remember that anytime you find an article through the library database or through NC Live, you can look at the abstract, which is just a summary, and it tells you what you're going to find in the article itself. So this is a good way for you to get an idea of whether you actually want this or not. But let's say that you do want this. First thing you need to do is go over here to Cite, and it's going to bring up, by default, it's going to bring up APA 6th for some reason. But we want MLA 8th. There it is. There's your MLA citation. Now, we'll have to make sure that it's right, but I can just copy, Control-C that on over to Microsoft Word. There it is. Now, a few things. If you remember, it needs to be Times New Roman. It needs to be size 12. It also needs to be double-spaced. That looks better. But there's also one more thing that needs to happen as far as formatting a citation goes. There's a couple ways you can get to this. You can go to this little thing right here that says paragraph settings. But under indentation, for citations, I always want to use hanging. Also need to go to don't add space between paragraphs of the same style. There. Now I still need to make sure that this is right. So, let's make sure. Okay, that's the name, right? The article title is in quotation marks. That's correct. The publication is in italics. Volume, period, yeah, that looks right. That looks good. Now, if you want, because it takes up a lot of space, you can delete the hyperlink as long as this part is here, the DLI. But now, if you, for whatever reason, lose track of where you got this article, you already have it in a document here. And so it's really, really easy to find it again. Now, ultimately, you'll have a list of citations, and they'll all be formatted this way. If it's the annotated bibliography that you're working on, then underneath each one, you'll have a brief summary and then a paragraph describing how you'll use the source. But if it's just a works cited page, then all you're going to have, center this, is works cited at the top. But that's really the extent of it. Now, as far as finding information goes, you may have to try a bunch of different ways, a bunch of different search terms, that sort of thing. Really, the most important thing a lot of the time is knowing what it is you actually want to say, which is why it's so important to have a solid thesis statement. But that is a very basic overview of MLA citation. If you have further questions, you can always contact me. That's what I'm here for.